my emotional reality. This is my story. It's raw, shameful, and deeply personal. But I'm sharing it because I believe someone out there needs to hear it. I was once that woman who had it all, or so it seemed. I was married to Michael, a man who loved me with all his heart. We had 2 beautiful children and a life grounded in faith and family. But deep inside, I carried a secret longing, a yearning for something I thought I had lost forever. James, my ex-boyfriend, was my first love. The one I compared everything to even years after our relationship ended. Memories of him lingered like a shadow. And when he reappeared in my life, I found myself walking down a path I never imagined I'd take. These are flashback scenes of my young love. At this junction, if you're not following us, please take out time to subscribe to our channel, as this will encourage us to grow and serve you more exciting real-life stories, not only to feed your curiosity, but to help you know that others have gone the same path if you're going through same and how. They journey through it and became strong, or got healed, and took responsibility for their actions, as well as how they were able to shut the mouth of lions that wants to take advantage of their decisions. James and I were inseparable once. He was my everything, my first kiss, my first love, the man who made me believe in romance. He had a way of making me feel seen, cherished, special. I remember the little things, the cake he baked for me on my birthday, the songs he sang to me over the phone. But like so many young loves, ours burned bright and fast. We were passionate, but we were also reckless, and eventually we went our separate ways. I thought I had moved on. I thought I had buried him in the past. Or so I told myself. Then Michael came into my life. He was everything James wasn't. Steady, reliable, deeply rooted in his faith. He wasn't flashy or particularly romantic, but he was kind, patient, and so sure of his love for me. When we married, I told myself I was choosing stability over passion. I convinced myself that the whirlwind romance I'd shared with James was just a youthful fantasy, and that Michael was the man God had chosen for me. But no matter how wonderful Michael was, a part of me couldn't let go of James. I carried his memory like a hidden keepsake, something I wasn't ready to give up. At the cafe. It was an ordinary day when James walked back into my life. I was sitting in a cafe, lost in thought, when he came through the door. I recognized him instantly. Time had changed him. His hair was streaked with gray, his face more lined, but that same spark was in his eyes. When our eyes met, it was like the years fell away. My heart raced, and for a moment, I felt like that young girl in love all over again. We started talking, catching up on all the years we'd missed. At first it was harmless, 2 old friends reconnecting. But as the days turned into weeks, our conversations grew deeper, more intimate. He remembered things about me that even I had forgotten. It felt intoxicating, like rediscovering a part of myself I thought was lost. James made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. And the more we talked, the more I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew about my life. At first, I told myself it was innocent. Just words on a screen, memories shared between old friends. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I began to compare everything. Michael's steady but predictable love to James's fiery passion, the quiet routines of my marriage to the excitement of reconnecting with someone who once knew me so deeply. The rational part of me knew I was walking into dangerous territory, but my heart was louder than my head, and so I let the door open just a little wider. When James suggested meeting in person, I hesitated, I knew what it would mean, what it could lead to. But the pull was too strong, the desire too overwhelming. I told myself it was just to talk, just to catch up like old friends. But in my heart, I knew that wasn't true. I knew I was about to cross a line I could never uncross. I made a choice that day, a choice I will carry with me for the rest of my life. As I stepped into that elevator, I knew I was about to betray everything I held dear. My husband, my family, my faith. But in that moment, the pull of desire was stronger than the weight of my conscience. And so I walked forward, knowing full well the cost. This is just the beginning of my story. In the next episode, I'll share what happened in that hotel room and how it changed everything. If you've ever struggled with temptation or felt trapped between the past and the present, join me as I continue to share my journey, unfiltered, unashamed, and real. When James walked into that hotel room, it felt so real. This was the man I had dreamed about for years, the man I thought I had lost forever. And now, here he was, standing in front of me.
We hugged, and it was as if the years melted away. His touch brought back memories I had tried to bury, our laughter, our fights, our love. For a moment I let myself get lost in him, in the way he smelled, the way his arms felt around me. But as the minutes passed, the weight of what I was doing pressed heavier on my chest. I knew I was walking a dangerous line, but I didn't stop. I didn't want to stop. We started talking, like old friends catching up after years apart. He told me about his work, his family, his travels. I told him about Michael, the kids, my life at home. But as we talked, the air between us grew heavier, charged with something unspoken. Then he reached for my hand, and the room seemed to shift. His touch sent a jolt through me, and I felt myself leaning into him, letting my guard slip further and further away. In that moment, nothing else existed. Just him, just us. The world outside that hotel room disappeared, and I let myself give in completely. It was passionate, intoxicating, everything I had remembered and longed for. But beneath it all, there was a whisper, a quiet voice I tried to ignore. It told me this was wrong, that I was betraying everything I held dear. But I silenced it. I pushed it aside, letting the moment consume me, and when it was over, the silence in the room felt deafening. As James slept beside me, the weight of what I had done crashed down on me like a wave. The thrill of the moment was gone, replaced by a hollow ache of regret and shame. I had betrayed Michael, the man who had stood by me through everything. I had betrayed my children, the family we had built together. I had betrayed myself, my values, my faith. And for what? A fleeting escape from reality, a fantasy that no longer fit the life I had chosen, felt like stepping into a different world. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Every time Michael smiled at me, every time he kissed me, I felt like a fraud. I couldn't look him in the eyes without hearing the echo of my betrayal. I wanted to tell him, to confess everything, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The words wouldn't come. I told myself it was to protect him, to protect our family. But deep down I knew the truth. I was afraid of losing him, afraid of the consequences, afraid of facing the full weight of what I had done. The weight of guilt. The guilt was suffocating. It followed me everywhere, a constant reminder of the line I had crossed. I tried to bury it, to push it down and pretend it wasn't there, but it wouldn't go away. I found myself pulling away from Michael, creating distance where there had once been closeness. I couldn't bear to let him touch me, to hold me, knowing what I had done. And then there was James. He called, he texted, wanting to see me again, but every time I heard his voice, it only made the guilt worse. I knew I had to end it, but cutting him off felt like losing a part of myself. I reached a breaking point one day. I couldn't carry the weight of my choices anymore. I drove to church, desperate for answers, desperate for peace. As I knelt at the altar, the tears came freely. I poured out everything to God. The guilt, the shame, the regret. I begged for his forgiveness, for his guidance, for his strength. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. A quiet, gentle voice whispered to my heart, "You are forgiven. You are loved." Letting go of James was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was necessary. I knew I couldn't undo what I had done, but I could choose to move forward, to rebuild, to fight for the life I had almost thrown away. I began to see Michael in a new light, not as the man I had settled for, but as the man God had chosen for me. Slowly, with God's help, we started to rebuild what I had nearly destroyed. I'm not proud of my story, but I'm grateful for the lessons it taught me. God's love is bigger than our mistakes, with temptation, and His grace is with the weight of your choices, no worst failures. Redemption is possible. The road isn't easy, but with God, it is always worth it. Thank you for listening to my story. If it has touched your heart, I invite you to join me as I continue to share real, unashamed stories.